Hello out there. Time for Family Read Aloud. We're finishing up our Family Read Aloud series with some poetry by Black authors. And after this week, we'll move on to some different things, some different programming for the summer as school wraps up. If you didn't catch yesterday's book was 13 Ways of Looking at a Black Boy. And if you didn't catch it, I hope you'd go back and look at it. It's only about 12 or 13 minutes long. Today we are doing another one. We are doing One Last Word by Nikki Grimes. And this book I read for the first time last fall for one of my courses, for my children's literature course. And it's really remarkable, so I'm excited to share it with you. Okay, so One Last Word, Wisdom from the Harlem Renaissance by Nikki Grimes, published by Bloomsbury. Okay, and this one, just like the one we did yesterday, there is artwork in here that I'll show you. But in the beginning, there's some history that I want to read, and just some notes from the author and the way the poetry is written, because it's an interesting way to approach poetry. So I'm going to read about that, and then we'll get started with the actual poetry itself. But I think it's important to share this beginning information with you. Okay, so I'm going to start with a preface. I was 13 years old when I read my poetry aloud in front of an audience for the first time. The event took place at the County Cullen Library in New York City, a local branch named after one of the leading poets of the Harlem Renaissance. A lover of poetry for most of my young life, I was well aware of the impact of County Cullen, Langston Hughes, Paul Laurence Dunbar, and all the other African-American poets of the era. After all, I was a young poet born in the very Harlem from which many of their careers were launched. As I ascended the stage that day, I felt as if I were stepping into the stream of the Renaissance poets who had come before me. I feel their weight and their influence still. The elegance and power of their poetry gave me wings. At the beginning of my career, my focus was on prose and poetry for the adult market. Reading my work at college campuses, I often shared the stages with the likes of Nikki Giovanni, Sonia Sanchez, and Amiri Baraka. Ultimately, though, I switched my emphasis to literature for children and young adults. Nonetheless, the poets of the Harlem Renaissance remained my primary influences. Now that I am at a point in my career where my work is being taught in schools across the country, I want to take a moment to celebrate those earlier poets, add my voice to theirs in a very direct way, and introduce them to a new generation. Okay, now we're going to read, that was a preface by the author Nikki Grimes. Now we're going to read a little bit about, I'm going to tell you a little bit about the Harlem Renaissance. The Harlem Renaissance was one of the most remarkable periods of artistic growth and exploration in American history. This era followed the Great Migration, when millions of African Americans left the South in search of a better life. Many of them settled in Harlem, where they finally felt free to express themselves and speak their minds without fear. And one of the ways they did so was through the arts. These were the heady days of such luminaries as James Weldon Johnson, Josephine Baker, and artist Aaron Douglas. Wow. Between 1918 and the mid to late 1930s, an explosion of African American music, art, and literature spread from one big city to another. But it was in Harlem that the greatest number and range of poets and writers gathered, including Arna Bontemps, County Cullen, Zora Neale Hurston, Georgia Douglas Johnson, Jean Toomer, and Langston Hughes. A number of extraordinary women are usually left off that roster. Gwendolyn Bennett, Clara Ann Thompson, and Anne Spencer among them. These and other emerging African American writers found a home for their artistic self-expression in Black-owned magazines and literary journals like Fire, Opportunity, a journal of Negro life, and The Crisis, published by W.E.B. Du Bois, with novelist and poet Jessie Redmond Fawcett as its literary editor. In fact, Black-owned newspapers and journals sprung up throughout the northern states. It was there, removed from the daily constrictions of Jim Crow laws and the constant threat of violence from the Ku Klux Klan, that African Americans spread their cultural wings and began to fly. Personal essays, fiction, and poetry reflecting racial pride began to take center stage, while the first glimpses of Black life, as seen from a Black perspective, came to the fore. Together with the music dance, and visual art created by African Americans during this era, the groundbreaking literature that sprung from the Harlem Renaissance proved to America and the world that there was more to the minds, hearts, and souls of Black folk than previously expressed. Throughout the decades, this literature has reminded readers of all races how vital it is that we define ourselves, set our own paths, celebrate our own capabilities, and determine our own destiny, no matter what obstacles are placed in our way. I have been honored to attend the Coretta Scott King Book Awards breakfast on many occasions, and whenever I rise to join in the refrain of Lift Every Voice and Sing by James Weldon Johnson, I feel the pull of the tether that connects me to the Harlem Renaissance. The art and literature of that era still resonates today. Why look to writers of the Harlem Renaissance for wisdom and strength in difficult times? Because these writers, so recently removed from slavery in the Jim Crow South, survived much. They still have much to teach us regarding toughness, survival, and a positive attitude. These literary lights, writing at a time when the lynching of Black men filled the news, were more than familiar with racial profiling, racial violence, and every variety of injustice imaginable. Yet they ascended to great heights in spite of it all. Their works exude power and wisdom aplenty. They knew the importance of telling their own stories, of presenting their own images to the world. Above all, they understood how to make the most of their freedom, despite living in a nation that had not then, and has not yet, fully realized its promise of freedom and justice for all. This is the author's note. Mother to Son is one of the best known and best loved poems by Langston Hughes. For years I thought the poem was titled The Crystal Stair because the phrase "no crystal stair" repeated twice in the poem is one that lingers in my memory. Life for me, wrote Hughes, ain't been no crystal stair. I could say the same. I'm sure that's one of the reasons this poem is so dear to me. We live in a time when life is hard for many people. Yet there is reason to hope and to dig deep for the strength hidden inside all of us. That is the message I take from Hughes's poem, and from all the other poems and poets included in this collection. That is also the message I explore in my own poems, inspired by these wonderful wordsmiths of the Harlem Renaissance. Now I'm going to read about the form of poetry used in this book. The form I used to create this poetry is called the Golden Shovel. It was first introduced to me when I was asked to contribute to the University of Arkansas Press collection titled The Golden Shovel Anthology, a book honoring the work of Gwendolyn Brooks. The poem I penned was titled Storm, developed from a line in the Brooks poem, A Light and Diplomatic Bird. The idea of a golden shovel poem is to take a short poem in its entirety, or a line from that poem, called a striking line, and create a new poem using the words from the original. Say you decide to use a single line. You would arrange that line word by word in the right margin, like this. Then you would write a new poem, each line ending in one of these words. In the example above, that would mean the first line of the poem would end with the word in, the second line would end with the word the, and so on. I wake and shake off the morning as Mom tiptoes in. Rise and shine, she whispers, always the same old song. Get up, right now. I groan on cue, but she gives me no margin. Okay, so you can see here. So that's the original line from the poem in the right margin. Okay, and then I created a new poem ending that with these words over here. This is a very challenging way to create a poem, especially in terms of coming up with something that makes sense, and I love it for that very reason. In this form, the poet is bound by the words of the original poem. But the possibilities for creating something entirely new are exciting. I hope you enjoy reading these as much as I enjoyed writing them. Nikki Grimes. Part 1, Emergency Measures. Emergency Measures by Nikki Grimes. My sister and I watch the 5 o'clock news, which spells out our worth in the world. According to reports, it's somewhere on the minus side. That may be only hearsay, but how can I live long enough to disprove the lie? How can I stay strong in a world where fear and hate wait outside my door? My teacher tells me to go in search of counsel, back to the Harlem Renaissance, when poetry burst like a dam and a river of wisdom words rushed through the streets I call home. Can I really find fuel for the future in the past? Less sure than desperate, I dip my spoon into the bowl of years, stir till I reach the Renaissance and find a few choice lines to chew on, and I think, we'll see, we'll see. Storm Ending by Jean Toomer. Thunder blossoms gorgeously above our heads, great hollow bell-like flowers rumbling in the wind, stretching clappers to strike our ears, full-lipped flowers bitten by the sun, bleeding rain, dripping rain like golden honey, and the sweet earth flying from the thunder. Truth by Nikki Grimes. The truth is, every day we rise is like thunder. A clap of surprise could be echoes of trouble or blossoms of blessing. You never know what garish or gorgeously disguised memories to be might rain down from above. So look up. Claim that cloud with the silver lining. Our job, if you ask me, is to follow it. See where it heads. I want to show you. This was Jean Toomer's poem. Okay. Nikki took this top line, thunder blossoms gorgeously above our heads. Okay, it's bold. And that's what she used to make her poem. She used that first line from Jean Toomer's poem. You can see it, thunder blossoms gorgeously above our heads. And she made her new poem out of it. And I just wanted to show you the illustrations as well, so you get an idea for the Golden Shovel poetry. Life and Death by Clara Ann Thompson. We live, and how intense is life, so full of stress, so full of strife, so full of hopes, so full of fears, of joy and sorrow. Sorry, I'm just trying to come through. Smiles and tears. And oh, how fruitless is the quest unless we're striving for the best. We die, and oh, how sad is death. How sad when we relinquish breath, when all life's glory slips away and leaves us but a mass of clay. How sad, and oh, how dark the night unless we found eternal light. This of our brother we can say, we meet to honor him today. Because he fought life's battle well, he stood where heaviest missiles fell, oft wounded in the crucial test, still ever striving for the best. Still striving, he has fallen now. We've placed the laurel on his brow, while in our hearts we wonder why God called this man so soon to die. We wonder, oh, how blind are we? His rugged path we could not see. We only saw his wealth and fame, his noble station, honored name. We need not envy him his place, who seeks to lift a trodden race. God knew how hard and well he'd fought the noble deeds his hands had wrought. God heard the deep sighs of his breast. He heard and gave the warrior rest. And shall we weep and say 'tis night when he has found eternal light? So that was Clara Ann Thompson's poem. And here Nikki Grimes is using that first phrase, we live and how intense is life, and making it into a Golden Shovel poem called Crucible of Champions by Nikki Grimes. And it is in parts, so you can see. Jamon. The evening news never spares us. Tune in and we hear if you're a boy and you're black, you live with a target on your back. We each take it in and you shiver. One sharp-bladed question hanging overhead. How long do I get to walk on this earth? The smell of death is too intense, and so we bury the thought. Because the future is ours, right? We get to choose? Well, we choose life. Excuse me. Dina. Stupid is the word that stalks me. I'm anything but, so I seethe inside. Even on a good day, I'm full of an anger that burns my breath. Why? It's all because of my diagnosed dyslexia. Ask me to read aloud, I stress. Whenever the teacher calls on me in class, I stutter. So my folks surmise that my head is hollow. Actually, it's quite full. My words and letters simply switch places. They've got a mind of their own. I call that reason enough for stress, for strife. Helena. I've never met a marine biologist, so what makes me think I could be one? My head is full of fantasies that don't fit other people's ideas of what's possible. They tell me I should squeeze my hopes into a miniature box of their design. But I'm not so inclined. They're infinitesimal Perceptions are not for me. I'm full as a pinata stuffed with daring and delectable dreams of all I can truly be. There's hardly room for doubts, for fears. Damien. No one cuts you any slack if you're a boy, especially of a particular hue, and you decide to find your joy in ballet. Never mind that it's as tough as any sport and gives you a perfect place to pack whatever sorrow shadows you. Flex, point, leap, and you're all smiles before you know it. Dance is demanding too, and the strength it takes would leave most jocks in tears. Cora. Lips zipped, I fight to keep silent, to fit in, and when I speak, I whisper. Silly, I know, but oh, don't the boys love it? Besides, it's how the popular girls behave. It's tiresome, though, even fruitless, to pretend to be somebody you're not. Like Mom says, life is too short. Better to take a lonelier road, discover the who of you. That journey is the best quest. Blake. Coach reminds me I'll be stuck in a do-nothing job unless I win one of the basketball scholarships we're all after. Would steroids multiply the effects of my striving? I consider giving them a try, but cheating is not for champions. I'd rather pass the test for the strongest, the fastest, top-notch version of me. Then I'll truly be one of the best. For a Poet by County Cullen. I have wrapped my dreams in a silken cloth and laid them away in a box of gold, where long will cling the lips of the moth. I have wrapped my dreams in silken cloth. I hide no hate. I am not even wroth. Who found earth's breath so keen and cold? I have wrapped my dreams in a silken cloth and laid them away in a box of gold. A Safe Place by Nikki Grimes. Dream killers daily stalk the streets you and I travel, trying to trip us up, but we can give them the slip. I have learned to protect my heart songs. I keep them wrapped in the well wishes of my family, the encouragement of my truest friends. Sometimes, using pen and ink, I anchor my dreams and let them sink in the margins of a diary. Or maybe I slide them in a smooth sandalwood box buried beneath my bed. But a dream called impossible? That I tuck safely between the silken folds of my private thought, tough as steel, thin as cloth. This illustration. I'm going to start a little bit of part 2. And we'll finish the rest of the book tomorrow. Part 2 is Calling Dreams. Calling Dreams by Georgia Douglas Johnson. The right to make my dreams come true, I ask, nay, I demand of life. Nor shall fate's deadly contraband impede my steps, nor countermand. Too long my heart against the ground has beat the dusty years around, and now at length I rise, I wake, and stride into the morning break. The Sculptor by Nikki Grimes. No accident of birth or race or place determines the scope of hope or dreams I have a right to. I inventory my head and heart to weigh and measure what talents I might use to make my own tomorrow. It all depends on the grit at my disposal. My father says hard work is the clay dreams are molded from. Yes, molded. Dreams do not come. They are carved, muscled into something solid, something true. We Wear the Mask by Paul Laurence Dunbar. We wear the mask that grins and lies. It hides our cheeks and shades our eyes. This debt we pay to human guile. With torn and bleeding hearts we smile, and mouth with myriad subtleties. Why should the world be overwise in counting all our tears and sighs? Nay, let them only see us while we wear the mask. We smile, but oh, great Christ, our cries to thee from tortured souls arise. We sing, but oh, the clay is vile beneath our feet and long the mile, but let the world dream otherwise. We wear the mask. Jabari Unmasked by Nikki Grimes. Fresh out of middle school, we all understand the rules. Wear whatever's in, scowl on cue to convince the world we're fearless, anything to mask the million insecurities that pockmark our skin like acne. Go on the grins when we strut down the hall. We talk tough and hope to God it's enough to get us by. It's all lies. We despise the masquerade. It may disguise our fears, but also hides our kind and tender hearts, our agile minds, the wit that sits behind our cheeks. Who'd guess that some of us are geeks and nerds and poets too? Clothed in shades of chocolate skin, our color works to camouflage our character and promise, at least in certain eyes. One look and we are neatly judged, this gang, these thugs, these dark delinquents in debt to society. Meanwhile, you fail to see that we are college bound, more than a few, prepared to pay attention to psychology, the sciences, the arts, to thoughtfully unfurl the scrolls of human history. Instead, you see a thief who uses guile. Is such unfairness what the world is filled with? The evidence is seen in spirits ripped and torn. Still, the world needs the dreams we offer, and should we leave those dreams bleeding on the road, we'd shrink our own hearts down to nothing. And that we would regret. Better to let our anger go and smile. The ignorant ignore as best you can, and in the end, mask aside, fresh in your mouth, with ferocious lines of potent poetry, with metaphors that mightily reveal the myriad of emotions you feel, yet in all their subtleties. That's where we're going to leave off for today. We will resume reading One Last Word by Nikki Grimes tomorrow at 6. Okay. Take care, be kind, be safe. Until tomorrow.